Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm the Witch of Wonderlust, and today I've got an interview with an author that I'm really excited to share with you. She is the author of Water Witchcraft, Magic and Lore from the Celtic Tradition, and The Way of the Water Priestess, Entering the World of Water Magic. Both of these books are phenomenal books, especially if you are wanting to work with the element of water, and especially Water Witchcraft, I could not recommend to you enough. She also hosts Water Wednesdays on her Instagram as a live, so if you ever drop in on that, she usually gives some information and answers questions and covers a specific topic or sometimes has a guest. Maybe one of those guests was me. So if you want to go on her Instagram, I'll link that down below. But without further ado, I will let you get to the interview. You can go ahead and just play this podcast style and just listen because most of this will be pretty audio heavy instead of visual based. But either way, I hope that you enjoy this interview as much as I did with Annwyn and Avalon. Recording. Nice. Okay, well, hello. Thank you for coming on my channel and letting me pick your brain about all the stuff. For those of you who don't know, or for those of them who don't know you, can you state your name, your pronouns, and give us a little bit like of a bio for you?
Yeah, sure. My name is Annwyn Avalon. My pronouns are she, her, and my bio is really long, but the short, sweet version is I focus on my witchcraft, my magic focuses on water and Avalon and the magic of the Celtic lands. But I have a background in anthropology and in art and dance. And I went through my witchcraft training and initiation years and years ago, over a decade now. And I was initiated then as a witch and a priestess. And so my path pretty much takes me on both directions of magic and lore and folk magic, which is so near and dear to my heart. I love folk magic so much, especially when it comes to water. But I do have a little bit of a ritual background as well. And I do like to focus on the feminine arts. I call them the feminine arts because I feel like it's better, it's more inclusive, and it really just means the voice of water that comes through in a soft, more feminine way. Doesn't necessarily mean I work only with women. Even though I have water priestess training, I actually have several um, men folk and non-binary folk that have gone through it, and I try and teach in this way that's very inclusive, even though I identify as a priestess, and it's a word that I really find, I guess, near and dear to my heart. I see it more as a path of service than as a hierarchical, I am above everyone. It doesn't resonate with me, but so my path as a priestess is very much in service to the sacred landscape and the water and the water spirits. And then my witchcraft practice is very much about being in a symbiotic relationship, and not necessarily in service, but that overlaps, but in a way that there is a living and developing relationship with the land and the water and all the spirits that dwell within. And I think that that was longer than I expected to go, but
That's fine. I know you are a very multifaceted woman. So for people who don't know too, I do have these books, both of our which are wonderful. I adore water witchcraft. I mean, I love the way of the water priestess as well, but I think the water witchcraft hit my heart, my little folk heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just loved the idea because I mean, clearly you work with water a lot. And I tried to wear blue, but I realized I only own one thing that's blue and it's dirty. So I was like, we're going with green. But the water witchcraft book, I loved so much because it took something that I kind of felt was more niche in a way and showed me that it was like this huge umbrella. Like water witchcraft is so, I mean, I knew it was versatile, but I just didn't know how to use it. And that book really opened up a lot of different ways and inspired me to start using water. And like every time it rains, which like is not often here, but so when it does, I'm like, oh my God, I have to go get rainwater. I go out and like I set out a bunch of bowls, and it's a whole thing. And the fact that it's also depending on what it's like when it rains, and is it like a nice sunny shower, or is it like a thunderstorm, or all these different things, and you can use them for different things. And on top of that, I love like the academia type of side of like labeling things, so that just like made it even better of like I'm going to label like what the moon was and what the date was and what it was like out. So tell me a little bit about how you got into like what that journey into working with water so intimately looked like.
Yeah, that's a great question. Ooh, that's a really good one. So let me start by saying that Water Witchcraft is probably, so it was my first book. I had no idea what I was doing, but it's probably the closest. It is a product of my heart and like my soul, and I just everything in there, the spirits, the little folk magic, the use a, fairy loaf for this and seaweed for that. Those, oh gosh, it just makes my heart sing. So even though, Water Priestess has more ceremony, like more ritual and stuff like that in there. Um, yeah, Water Witchcraft is just this product of my deep love for water and magic and folk magic. And so how it all came about, um, it's one of those, there's a certain point on the timeline and then we have a flashback. So I started um, my magical path fresh out of high school, right after I graduated at 17, and I ended up in art school, and my first tidbits of ceremonial magic I got, as well as things like tarot cards and stuff like that. And um, so I was learning all of these things, but didn't really understand anything. And I think that we all know those beginning stages where we're like, wow, oh my gosh, this is real. But I still didn't really have a framework for it. Like in my mind, a witch was still fantasy. Like I grew up in a very Baptist slash evangelical home where the divine feminine was not a thing. Even praying to Mary was considered bad, and like not of Christ, and very culty, like evangelical born again, right? So to be a witch, coming from that, you know, is tough. Is tough. I had a lot of rewriting to do, and I lost a lot, including my family, because of it. Um, but but I fast forward, time goes on. I have a baby. I got pregnant at 21. My kiddo is 16 and a half now. And, I started being a mom real early, and I found myself living in Japan for 3 years with my son when he was, 2, 3, 4, right in there. And we spent a lot of time on the beach. And I actually joined my first pagan circle in Japan because
Really? That's
yeah,
interesting. I don't think I did you say that in your book?
I don't think I did.
Yeah, I was like,
I might,
I don't think I knew that. That's really interesting.
right? So this is back when Witchbox was still alive, and I put in like Witchcraft Okinawa or something like that, because I was not only was I in Japan, but I was
Oh,
actually
I
on
love Okinawa.
yeah,
Was it
this kind of little
for the military?
mhm, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, not me personally, but that's why I was there.
I see.
Um,
Yeah.
and so my partner did like 14 years as a pilot and other things. Anyways,
Gotcha.
but yeah, so at the time, so Okinawa, so there's mainland for people that might not know, and then Okinawa is whoop, down here. So it's like this tiny little 60-mile, island. But I lived in town in a Japanese neighborhood in a Japanese house, on a cliff looking over the ocean. And I had been practicing solitary for a long time, and there was a lot of crystals and a lot of like alternative stuff in Japan, that was just right there in front of me. I would I was in so I not only was I there and kind of learning these things and living with my son and my partner, but I was dancing and I was teaching belly dance. So I was teaching belly dance, and I was dancing, as the house dancer at the Istanbul Kebab House. Um, and I had American students and Japanese students, and we were like, by the end of it, we were doing shows in town. And there's a pretty good, thriving belly dance community now because of it. So, anyway, so I started taking ballet there as well because I had a lot of time. And like right across from the ballet studio was this crystal shop. And, they went to the crystal shop, like the Tucson Gem Show and stuff like that. And they'd come back to Okinawa and they'd bring me books in English, because they were like, oh, look, we know that you would want this. And I was like,
Oh,
yes, I do
that's
want
so
this.
sweet.
So they'd bring back the books in English, I'd buy them from them. And so simultaneously as this was happening, is when I reached out to Witchbox and just put in like, Okinawa witchcraft. And it was like Circle of the Rising Moon came up. Um, and it's a military, it was a military, American military circle. It was actually sponsored by I think was it the Sacred Well? Oh, that might not be right. Or like the Sacred Well congregation. It was a pagan church out of Texas that would sponsor or be the sponsored church for the military pagan circles, because in order
Wow, I
to,
didn't know they had that.
yeah,
Wow.
it's a whole thing. I mean, I've lost touch with it in the past 10 years, but Selena Fox was the pioneer to get the pentagram on the pentagram, and I think now a couple of like Norse symbols and stuff like that on the military gravestones, because up until her work in, I think, 1997 is when they finally kind of gave the thumbs up. You could have a cross, a the flag, or the Star of David. And so she did a whole bunch of campaigning and everything like that. So now, if you are Norse pagan or pagan or Wiccan or whatever, and you die in combat and you get to be in one of the military graveyards,
That's
you can
cool.
actually choose to have the pentagram on there, and it's because of her.
Wow. What did you say her name was? Selena something?
Selena Fox. Like Selena Fox, the priestess.
Oh, okay.
She always has a
Okay.
rattle.
Got it.
She's a,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
So
I had no idea. That is absolutely fascinating. Thank you for
yeah,
sharing that.
yeah. There's actually, I think, like a stone circle on one of the Air Force bases in, it might be in Colorado. It might be where you're like near you. Because one of the Air Force bases, I think Colorado, California, I think Colorado. Yeah, there's like a big stone circle type of thing. And but
Hmm.
anyways, none of that's important for now. So but so anyway, so Sacred Ball congregation. So in order to like have a pagan church or circle on a military base, all you have to do is have a church sponsorship. And so this is what the Sacred Well congregation, I think that's what it was. I could be wrong. Came up, like this was their whole thing, was to be this church so that there could be these military groups. So I ended up at that. And it was great because I met so many really cool people, some of who are still practicing today. Um, we actually do have a lot of military pagans, and pagan adjacent, or in that kind of umbrella, which is quite fascinating.
That's amazing. Yeah, because that's not the thing that comes to mind when you think of American military is pagan at all, so it's like it's very interesting. I have a lot of family and a lot of friends who are in the military, and so I've been very exposed to it growing up, and so like that's definitely a very new thing to hear, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, actually, I spent a lot of time in Jacksonville, North Carolina too, and I'll get to that part because that's important.
Okay.
But there's multiple military bases there, and actually, one of my first formal teachers was retired Navy, and he ran a circle near the military bases, and there's a lot of military folks that circled in and out of it. So they are there. It's a little bit underground. It depends on where it is, but with Witchbox gone too, I don't know how easy things are to find anymore. But yeah, there was a point. I, of course, this was for me the early 2000s. So this was in
So
the,
weird to say out loud. The early 2000s.
I know, like, I know.
Ah.
This was deep in the shadow of 9/11.
Ah.
And I think that there's a difference in the military, or a feel from when, post like 9/11 to now. And
100%.
my
Yeah.
partner got out in 2011 because we started to just be like, huh, time to make some changes in our
Yeah.
life. But Yeah, so okay, so Japan. So there I am in Japan. I find this pagan military circle, and they have a little like closet, the ritual closet, and we're able to use this room. And we would meet for the Sabbats and different things. And they actually, I'd love to say that I helped build it, but I did not. I helped maintain it for a while. But if we walked out the front door and down a little sidewalk and crossed the road, there was just this natural area full of trees, and they had cleared out a grove and pulled in some small stones and actually had made a little secret stone circle. um, and so we would do ritual there, and then so we also had an adopt a beach, and we would clean. Oh my gosh, it was so dirty. We would clean the beach, but then we would also do ritual. I would go back and spend a lot of time there, and I started really having deep experiences. And I'll say that I woke up to the water, the spirit of water at that point. But it wouldn't be until a few more years, yeah, a few more years, before I really was like, oh, okay, water's the focus. Got it. So, time passes, and I moved back to the States, and I start actually formal training. I'm going to date myself again, but I got onto a old Yahoo group.
Oh yeah, the Yahoo groups. I remember those.
Like, at least I'm not like AIM. No, thank goodness I'm
Yeah,
not that
AOL.
old. Like, not gonna date myself there, but yes. So a Yahoo group for Eastern North Carolina, and we were just chatting, and I said, I did a little introduction, and I was like, I'd love to like formally practice or formally study witchcraft, like, that would be amazing if that was even a thing. Ha ha ha. And this lady writes me and is like, I'm not trying to recruit you because that'd be kind of weird, but I wanted you to know that it is a thing, and like we have a program. And I was like, okay. Oh, so my first witchcraft books, I bought this before. Um, these were way before, but this is also a funny thing. It was in the back of a magazine. There was this little black and white ad that was like this big on like the last page, and it said witchcraft books. And I was like, I typed in the little website below it, and I was like, there's books about witchcraft. Oh my
So
God.
this is like a little side tangent is that I think I posted a video years ago. It was like one of my first few videos, and I was kind of like explaining how exciting it is now that witchcraft is making another comeback, and like you can be open about it, and there's a lot more resources. Like there's so many resources everywhere. There's books everywhere, and there's online, there's videos, there's blog posts. Like you can find anything. um anywhere. And it's like it was not like that not too long ago. And so I think I said something about how, and I, in Barnes and Noble, at least the one that I was in, there was not tarot cards up until I came, like I moved back, at least from what I know. And somebody was like, "You're fucking stupid. There were always tarot cards," and I was like, "Not in my Barnes and Noble. Like I don't know what to tell you, you know." And so it's like it when I try to like explain to new practitioners who are coming into this of like you have the world at your fingertips and you're so lucky and I want you to use this. That's the thing is like a lot of people don't realize that it wasn't very long ago that it was really hard to get your hands on like some really good quality books that weren't like Gerald Gardner, you know, and you're like, well, you know, like it's like that's my own opinion, but
Well,
I just
even then, like that was one of our only selections.
mhm.
I mean, we're talking about the time when Wicca and witchcraft were literally
The same
synonymous.
thing. Like they
Yeah.
were they yeah, and so it's like it was so narrowed and anyway, that's my side tangent. But so you found this little website and you
Yes.
typed it in.
So I went and I bought my books and I, you know, and that I remember just like opening the first one and like flipping through it and being like, oh, this is this, this is me. Like not I want to be this, but like this book, the things that I'm reading in this book, these are me. Like this book is describing me. And it like blew my mind. And I was like, crap, I'm a witch. Like, oh crap. So then I spent a good many a years wishing I wasn't, which is a whole other thing that I think a lot of people don't uh, understand is that 20 years ago, it wasn't cool to be a witch. Um, I both had this sense of relief of like, oh my God, I don't have to search anymore. I know who I am. And who I am is not acceptable to society, to my family. Like I'm other, like other. And I hid it for years, and I practiced, you know, publicly under a craft name and privately during my with my family. And then I just couldn't separate it anymore. And I came all the way out and of the broom closet, and now I pretty much don't speak to my family, which turned out to be good, but it was hard. It was a chosen death, and I think that's hard because it comes with a lot of like guilt and grief around, you know. Um, oh, like I'm choosing these things. It's not like these things are happening to me. Um, you know, like I'm choosing to be open about who I am. I'm choosing to accept the consequences of that. And so, yeah, there was this. Now, thankfully, my partner was like, yeah, that's fine. Don't care. You know, like when I finally was like, yeah, this is the thing. Like this is really who I am. It's not just like that, those wide-eyed of like, this is cool and I'm exploring. But yeah, my partner was like, awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
great.
but the rest of my family was like, ooh, she's evil. And even after, not long after that, I mean, I had friends that were teachers that got fired or their contracts wouldn't be renewed because they were openly Wiccan or teachers or sorry, or witchcraft, magical practitioners. And there was even a good friend of mine actually from that Okinawa circle when they also moved back and started their lives. She was like a beloved drama teacher, and this was, you guys, this was only like 2015 that this happened. It was in Oklahoma, but she lost her job. And
Wow.
it was never said that it was because she was Wiccan, but it was soon after she came out as Wiccan, and all of her students and the parents campaigned and got petitions together to bring her back, and they would not.
That is heartbreaking.
I know, and that's only 7 years ago. So we do have, there has been like this major, I'll go on a side tangent. I'll get back to my water pack in a
Please do.
second.
I love me some side tangents.
But but we are in this phase where it's like, oh, come on, you don't really get discriminated for being a witch. And largely in certain places that's true,
Mhm.
but in other places it's still a thing. I had a, I had a friend 2 years ago, I think, went to buy a lottery ticket, and for years and years he always uses his little pendulum to dowse for his lottery tickets, and they kicked him out of the gas station for it. Like, so there are little things that still happen in different pockets, and the East Coast, I think, is harder than the West Coast. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, in Oregon, and like 45 minutes from Portland, and let me tell you, the difference of the culture and the freedom and the wooiness up here, and the acceptability around that, is so much different than the South. Now I think that like Florida's quite open, but some of those middle states
Yeah,
are,
yeah,
are
there's
still tough.
well, America, especially if for those of you who don't live in America or have never been, it's fucking huge, first of all. And the vast difference, like each state is basically its own country, is how I explain it to people who don't live here,
Yeah,
because each state has its own culture, it has its own like flag, like they're basically their own countries. And so yes, we all have like a similarity blanket, but if you try to go to LA and then you think that all of the United States is like that, you will be so shell shocked, because I think it's really cool when people get to do like a full drive through and get to like take off, like 3 weeks or something, and just drive all the way through America, because people are always so fascinated with how vastly different, and especially if you go to the East Coast or the West Coast, whoo, let me tell you, those are two. And then North and South, like it's like this grid, and it's very, very interesting. And there's definitely parts that are way more accepting, and there are definitely parts that are way less safe for people who are openly not Christian or openly not straight or anything that is not generally very accepted, so
yeah.
very interesting. Sorry, that was my side tangent.
No, it's okay. I'm thankful that the tides have really changed and that it seems like it is continuing to go that direction. Although who knows what tomorrow will bring. At this point, it's like crazy bingo. Of like life is just like a crazy bingo sheet. But for the most part, with the exception of some of these recent setbacks that we've had, there does seem to be more of a move to mainstream and acceptability. Um, and I like that. I like it a
Yeah.
lot. I think it's a great thing. Okay, so back to my water path. So it's
Yes,
about
of
this
course.
point, right? So now I'm in North Carolina, and I've spoken to this lady, and we kind of hit it off. And I do start her training, and she's an academic, and her partner is like just a very intense natural magician, like in the middle of a ritual, and he can just come up with a 9-line poem that rhymes, and like just boom, 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 just like I haven't seen anybody so skilled in magic. Um, but he's a little ungrounded, but his partner's very grounded
that's
and very
that's the
academic.
balance, right? That's where the
Yeah,
balance comes in.
yes. So they do really balance each other out for the most part. So she had this very metaphysical background. She was a Wiccan high priestess. She was a Reiki teacher, a massage therapist, an energy worker, all these things. And he was the traditional witch before traditional witchcraft was a thing. We would have these big, we had two big events on their property every year, Mayfair for Beltane and Shadow Harvest for Samhain.
Oh,
And
that's so fun.
he would
I would love to have a
always
space to do that.
Right. Oh yeah, so for Beltane, we would build these like big, like we built a big 21 foot wicker man, and like just out of all natural things, it would one of the priestesses that was in their coven was like full of making this thing. So we'd make huge thing, and then we put prayer chains on them, and like the paper chains, and like everybody would have a chance to do a little bit of work and put a charm on there, and then yeah, after ritual we would light them on fire.
That is so cool. Oh my
it was
God.
it
You know
was
what?
awesome.
Manifesting that for me.
It was really, really awesome. And then for Shadow Harvest, we would do a lot more of Samhain type things. Oh gosh, one ritual I can remember that was really powerful was we had all these bones and like clay bones. Like I think it was a mix of real and like bone or clay that had been made to look like bone, and we had pomegranates, and we were all chanting, reddening the bones and
Oh,
squeezing the pomegranate juice, and
oh
like
my
so
God.
this was like my foundation
Yes.
witchcraft.
Feed my little witchy soul.
Right, and then he would come out in this big goat mask, this black goat mask, and run all over the place. so this was my background. So when you look at me, I and my craft, this priestess self, like being in service to the water, all of this metaphysical stuff that there is some value in it. Not any of the conspiracy things, but there is some value in energy work and sound and vibration and all these things that she had taught me. And then you've got the black goat running around on Samhain, and thing like that interactive ritual where it's not just like we're standing in ritual and now we say the thing. It
Mhm.
was these interactive rituals that really took us into these witchy realms. So
I
uh,
I'm just obsessed with that whole visual and like just how, like you said, like it's not structured. It's not like, okay, everybody think about this and now say this. It's just kind of like it's all just you all understand where you're going and you're just getting there in your own way. And I adore that. That's amazing. Oh, that sounds so fun. Okay, sorry. I just love
Is
this.
that right? I think that particular ritual was one where Peter Patton was there. So I am an informal student of Peter Patton's, and I say informal meaning I was in Untitled Tree for a while, which was his online teaching coven, but I never read in my cord. I never initiated before he passed. But my teachers did, and he was a big part of he was one of their favorite guests, so he would come out and teach and stuff like that. This was all taking place on the coast, like or near the coast, because this was a coastal area. And my teacher, of course, both of them were heavily influenced by water in their astrological sign. One was the quadruple Scorpio. I bet you can guess which one. And the other was a Cancer sun. And so there's a lot of watery influences. I even got my Reiki training was actually on the beach,
Oh, that sounds
like
beautiful.
100 and maybe like 200 yards from the water. Like, it was right there. So about this time I started to see, wait a second, water, 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 all of these things. And I'm like, huh, okay. And at this point I'm growing up, right, in my magical witchcraft practice. Like I'm growing up, and I'm becoming a like young adult where I'm like I'm confident, I can do things on my own, I can lead a circle. I tried a couple circles here and there before formal training, didn't do well. But again, I was holding them on the beach. And so I kept looking at this and being like, wow, all of this like water. And then I started looking back, even before that, into my childhood, and being like, okay, wait, so I grew up on the beach because I grew up in Daytona Beach in Florida. My mom worked in the gift shops in the hotels. Like she was a cashier. That was like her thing. So sometimes I went to work with her, just hung out on the beach. Back in the day when you could do that kind of stuff and not get put in jail for, going to work and being like, go out and like play on the beach, child. Or, I'd like play around the hotel pool, stuff like that. And then I started looking back even more and realizing that we would spend the weekends in spring, like on all of the springs in Florida, Blue Springs, Silver Springs, Rock Springs, all of them. And then I looked back even further and was like, wait a second, grew up also on the edge of a swamp. Because if you know anything about Florida, it's beach, sacred springs, and swamp. And you can be in all three at once. And so the house that we lived on backed up to a wetland preserve. And being grown up in that strange, evangelical Baptist home, I was homeschooled. So I finished my school, all of my work at around lunchtime, noon every day. And then I put on my knee-high Wellingtons and said peace out to all people and hung out in the swamp until I would hear that, being called for dinner. And I had a little tree house, and I would go into the swamp and take old like tomato sauce jars and like fill it with water and put plants in there and like all these different things and the flower perfume water and like all of the things. So now at this point, I have a good understanding of what folk magic is, what herbalism is, what magic is, and all of these different things. And I'm going, if you look back, I was going through the motions. I was doing all of the things I do now, except I knew now I know what I'm doing. Before it was like, I like this plant. This plant's cool. I'll put it in this jar.
Isn't that how we all start though?
Right?
Kind of,
So,
we're like, ooh, this plant's kind of cool. I just dig it. And then you like put it everywhere. It's like your favorite flower for some reason. And then when you grow up and start practicing, you're like, oh, and then you realize all the magical properties and the healing properties. And you're like, I knew this before I knew it.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that. I knew it before I knew it. And so all of that at that moment was kind of like, oh my God, okay,
Yeah.
I figured this out. So then what happens next is fast forward, or I guess out of the flashback and to 2012. And I go on a pilgrimage to Glastonbury for the first time. I've gone through my witchcraft training. I've been initiated. I've even holding my own circles all by myself now. Started my coven like this. Like we had just started Triskel Rose right before, about a year before this, and I go to Glastonbury and I have just like this huge, I'm already awake, but I have this huge like awakening to the magic of the water path and really being like, okay, there's stuff here. There's got to be stuff. So I started looking and being like, okay, I've got a book on herbalism, I've got a book on incense, I've got a book on candle magic. Where's the water? Where's the water magic? We have the four elements. Where the hell is the water magic?
Mm-hmm.
I even had a book on magical birds. Yeah, so there was all of this information out there for these different things, these elements, but there was so little about water. And so I started looking and researching, and Glastonbury, I came back from Glastonbury being like with this message of like, write a water course so that other people like find the information and give the information to other people. And so the next year, 2013, I taught my first water magic class. And it was this 3-page bullet pointed outline. And half of the people were like, we don't get it. And I was like, I don't know how to tell you anything different. Like I had given out like these little vials of blessed water, and they were like, what do we do with them? And I'm like, anoint yourself, anoint your candles, anoint your crystals, like anything. And they're just like, but I don't get it. Why? And I was like, okay.
But that's how I felt too, right? I thought it was so niche. I thought it was like this tiny little snippet, and when in reality it's like there is this vast information and this vast use of water. And like again, reading that book, I was like, wow. And immediately I was like, I'm gonna go collect all the water that I can and like go bless it and make elixirs and all that jazz. Do you have any favorite like books or resources that you like for water that you used or that
there's a couple really good folk magic books that surround water, like the sea. So there's Folklore of the Sea. I think it's Horace Beck is one, and then Superstitions of the Sea. They're big ones. But if you like folk magic, especially sailor lore, like because the sailors, they were doing a lot. a lot of information was saved by the sailors, especially in the folk magic realms. Um, yeah, both of those are great. And then Gemma Gary just re-released her Wished Waters. So I have like one of the original, paid way too much money for it, but I had to have it. Wished Waters from, I think it came out in 2013, like when it first came out. But now she, like I saw the email this week, she re-released it paperback. And it's definitely good.
Perfect.
She actually read Water Witchcraft, and she's one of the reviews on there. I cried.
Yeah, she's incredible. I think yeah, I maybe one day I'll have her on my channel too. I'll be like, hey,
that'll be one thing. I've never met her in person, but I've really adored her work. And Wished Waters was like, that was like my sacred Bible for a little bit. And I put her name down on a list of, people to send my book to, it's like, just
yeah, just
let's
like maybe it'll
see.
just show up and she'll be like, oh, this is cool, I guess.
I never expected her. Her and RJ Stewart was the other one. I expected neither of them to even pay any attention. I had this big list of people I had to give to my editor, and I was like, okay, these are the people I know, these are the people that never will, and like these are some maybes. And it's so strange because the people I thought for sure, not one of them wrote anything. And I was like, huh. And then it was the people that I was like, these amazing folks will never ever like, toy with my stuff,
That's the thing is you don't know. You always gotta it's there's no harm in asking and like just
right.
sliding it in there, but you
To
never
have
know.
both of them kind of give me like a little bit of a thumbs up, it was amazing validation, because it was like, okay, this is well respected work. So okay, so 2013 is when I taught my first water magic class. So by 2015 I had this full course put together. It's insane. um and when I mean insane, it's 9 lessons, and like each one of them is like 24 pages of typed text.
All right.
So
My kind of course though. Give me all the info. All of it.
there's baths and stuff like that in there. And then what happened is that course ended up being the foundation for water witchcraft. So I actually taught a lot of it before it kind of came into water witchcraft. And then actually when I pitched it, I actually pitched it to Llewellyn first as water magic, and they said nope. And then Wiser was like, how fast can you get us a manuscript? And then they were the ones that were like, we really want it to be focused on the Celtic path. And I was like, well, that's okay, because like at this point 80% of it was anyways. I just took out like some extra little tidbits here or there. But yeah, so that's kind of how it all came about. But there was this want to not just find the information, but I wanted my practice to be valid. And I knew that, just like when I opened up my first witchcraft book and was like, oh my God, this book, it's me. Like, I can't believe that this book is me. I had kind of those same feelings and same thoughts, like, but reversed, being like, okay, I know that there's a magical water path. Like, it exists. And I know it because I remember these things. It's not really remembering, but it's a remembrance. I really am like remembering these things. Same with, that witchcraft, where I was like, whoa, I had been doing all this. I remembered it before I knew. And so this is when I started to be like, okay, time to go deep. And then I just started getting every folklore book that I could, not just about water. I did, lakes, and I found stuff on the ocean, and I found books on sacred springs. And then I just started diving in and looking into folk magic and folk stories, because the Celtic tradition was pretty much not really written down. It was, for the most part, and I use Celtic tradition as an umbrella term, by the way, but it wasn't written down. Most of it was oral tradition until the Irish texts came out, what was it, about 900, and then like the Welsh texts come out in about 1100. So I I knew that there was more, but then the oral traditions get passed down and then eventually written into fairy tales and stories. So I started looking at a lot of the folk stories and looking for the common things that I'd found in the folk stories that I'd found in the folk magic practices. And then it just started to form and to weave together and to just basically be like,
All the
here's
puzzle
everything.
pieces coming together. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And so if you work just with water spirits, it's so deep and it's so rich. If you work just ritual magic, water priestess is for you. If you work folk magic, you want to know about, the old lady that was connected to a frog, or that other old lady that cut off those frog legs and like sewed them into a pouch and put them around her neck and, wore them as a charm, or what seaweed was put in chimneys for, or fairy loaves were used for, or ammonites, have a bit of a fossil obsession too. And like all of these things, they not only have uses, but there's egregore behind them. It's not like we're just over here being like, this is a cool rock. Let's say that it's for peace. Like it's not like that. It's like, okay, this fossil has superstition about it. It has folk tales about it, specifically the ammonites. I mean, you can look up ammonites and find 12 different folk stories about it, turning serpents into stone, the young maiden who struck her staff, turning the serpent to stone, and then water came forth. And then we see these with like saints. We see this Saint Keynes and Saint Hilda have stories where they did a miraculous act, and then like the snakes turned to stone, and then water flowed forth. Well, it's extra interesting when you look at some of the sacred springs today and how they're decorated with things like ammonites, like the chalice well, like it's actually in the sidewalk, and you can see them. Even it's not a water site, but it's West Kennet, no, Stony Littleton Long Barrow. Um, it's this 5,000-year-old tomb in England, and it has, the little entrance. And the one entrance side here has this big ammonite on it. So obviously, even our ancestors thought that there was something magical about these things. But if they're used over and over and over like this, and we keep seeing them popping up in burial sites, in folk stories, in modern sacred wells, in stories about saints, well, there's something there. And that's just all of the puzzle pieces that you get to kind of weave together to go back and be like, hot damn, the ammonite is a really, really powerful magical talisman with so many threads of egregore. And when you just are looking at it, it's so easy to miss just a single thread. But when you put it into a volume like that, it's kind of like, no, here's the whole thing. So anyways, I get really excited about this
No, I
stuff.
love that's the great that's why I have you on, because I like people who are excited about their craft, excited about the things that they're talking about. That's the whole point. So that actually leads really well into my next question, because you're talking about how this one thing has so many uses and how it's at least proven to our ancestors and has followed us into the modern day as a useful tool or an ingredient in magic. So it's like, what are your favorite elixirs or favorite little things to make? Yeah, I see that smile. Things to make that you have seen, at least for you, over and over, a good result or manifestation. Because the craft is a lot of experimental things. That's why we have like those traditional things that we still use today, but then also there's a lot of experimental things happening now, especially now that witchcraft is much more open and mainstream, and people are experimenting with it. So what is something that you have found over your years? What kind of elixirs or baths or things that you're just like, this works every fucking time?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So just a couple of simple things that are my favorites
Mhm.
are using ammonites, hagstones, and honestly even quartz, just like regular quartz, to make simple, basic holy water or blessed water. And that is something that almost every day I will do in some way, whether like hagstones, they can be for prosperity and luck, but make great like water for seeing and scrying into the fairy realm, but also they're used in protection. So it's one of those, you can throw an ammonite into a bowl of water in the morning and say your prayers. And like, if you come up with protection that oh crap, I need, like later on, you do your tarot reading and you're like, oh, protection's coming up a lot. I need that. You can just grab it right away. Or if it's like, oh, luck is coming up a lot today, great. Or if you come up with nothing, it's like, well, perfect. Now I have some water for my evening work. Ammonites also, I tend to use ammonites a lot in the same way. um and they actually have a history of being put in milk pails
Hmm.
to bring about well, to protect the cows from witches stealing their milk, um but to also then give this like very bountiful milk production, so there's abundance. So simple things like that. um but let's see what else. I mean, there's even simple things like just the ninth wave, and where you need nothing. You just go out into the ocean, cross past the ninth wave, and do, your healing work or whatever it is that you're doing. But let's see. I think hagstone is probably the simplest, easiest go to at the moment. But let's see. I do collect water from all over the place. And
I'm like
I
that with dirt. I am such a hoe for dirt. And maybe it's because I'm, heavily an earth sign. I don't know, but I'm just like, give me the dirt wherever
Yeah,
I
I
am.
I collect I have bottles of sand from
Uh,
all different places, which is kind of like collecting dirt.
yeah.
But I have water from like the Sea of Galilee. I have people that send it to me all the time, and have water from very strange places. But I'm trying to think. Okay, hold on. There's got to be something. What is a go-to elixir? Oh, hmm. Honestly, spring water. It's spring water. Okay. So actually it's less of an elixir and more of a like a sacred place. I milk myself like bottles, like the big bottles of water, from the White Spring. So 10 years ago, if you had asked me about water in Glastonbury and Avalon, I'd be like, Red Spring, oh my God. But right now, the White Spring and the energies that are part of the White Spring, which are vast and deep and dark, and dark is in nocturnal and underworld. Um, Gosh, that water is just so powerful right now. I did an immersion 3 weeks ago, full immersion into the water itself because I was there. And It was interesting because I'd written about physical healing with holy wells and springs, and I talked about it, and I've lectured about it in folk magic, provided evidence, all of these things, and provided evidence through folk stories, through personal stories, through like different things like that. And I found immense spiritual and emotional healing through like different springs and different wells. But I can say that this is the first time that I did an immersion into a sacred spring like this, and I've done several now, where I came out and was like, okay, physically, I feel different. So I
Interesting.
think that it's not just the power of the water itself, but the power of the egregore surrounding the spring and the spirits that dwell there. And There's several. Um, Bridget has a shrine there, and so does the Black Madonna. and so does the solar deity. They just erected a shrine there to solar deity. And then did I say Morgan Le Fay? Morgan Le Fay also, or the fairy queen, or the Lady of Avalon, also has a shrine there. But the main, for me, personally, the main one is the White Spring, or sorry, the in the White Spring is Gwenupnith's shrine. And so the fairy king, the king of Annwyn. Um, so I think that it's more of the water that is that's like what's so potent for me right now. But I want to also give maybe a little like takeaway for other people too, because not everybody can just like shoot on down to the White Spring. But I guess I will say, like, I encourage people to actually go to, I think it's findaspring.com or springfinder.com. I can't remember. Um, and find a local spring near you. It may be drinkable, it may not be. Um, but I actually have a red spring 20 minutes from where I live in
Really?
Oregon. So check
That's
out that
close
website.
too. That's very close.
Yes, and it's iron, it's red, just like the Chalice Well is. It's quite fascinating. But there's actually springs everywhere, all over. So, get to know your local waters. Even around the ocean, there may be springs. You never know. But a little takeaway for others. Let's see. What is a good thing that people can get their hands on real easily? Um, Hawthorne. I think Hawthorne's pretty easy for everybody to get their hands on. I was gonna say Rowan, because Rowan has been a really big one that I've used for protection lately. And we all know Rowan's crosses, wearing the Rowan beads, and even burning Rowan leaves are really good to bring in kind of a protection type of energy, right? But one of my favorite baths is black salts. So not black salt that you make, but culinary grade black salt you can bathe in with rowan and rowan berries, like actually putting rowan berries in the bath. Um, Rue is another good one, but you have to be careful because there's some photo sensitivity with it.
Yeah.
But
And
it's easy.
rue is kind of hard to get for
Is
some
it
reason. Yeah,
okay?
like I mean, I've come across it. It's not rare, but it is something that you have to like seek. It's
Okay.
not something that you can be like, oh, there's some, and there's some, and there's some.
Got it. Okay. Well, hawthorn I know is easy to get because you can even get hawthorn tinctures at the grocery store, or at the health store. You can order flower and leaf from Mountain Rose and other places. But hawthorn, and here I am bringing in that watery fairy connection again, or the fair folk at Hawthorne Tree. So the Hawthorne Tree itself is liminal. I mean, it's a liminal point. We know that from Thomas the Rhymer, because this is where he meets the fairy queen. So it can be very liminal, but I really love using it for protection. And don't be afraid to put thorns in the water. Like you can make a protection water just out of the thorns. You can even do it with rose. Honestly, rose, blackberry, any plants in the Rosacea family, which rowan, rose, apple, um, apple not so much for protection, but because it doesn't really have thorns, but it could still be used. Hawthorn and even blackberries are like distant cousins, but they're all in the same family. So don't be afraid to make waters that are strange, because water absorbs and enhances whatever you put in it. And so if you put thorns in there, it's absolutely going to make this a little bit of a protection or thorny type of water. It's going to pick up that energy. And doing things like anointing your body or putting hawthorn in and lining the bath rim with hawthorn thorns or rose canes, stuff like that. Like, don't be afraid to get like weird with it and put things in there, because it plants have vibrational signatures just like crystals do. And to me, they're both alive. They both have spirits. And the rose is such a powerful plant. It's got a deep egregore, and I think it's easier to get than the hawthorn is. But yeah, using hawthorn and rose for protection, but then also it's got that other side, that beauty magic comes as well. Beauty and love. The rose is just associated with beauty and love. The hawthorn plant, I've actually got this is a little dried bundle of pink hawthorn, which is a little bit of a rare flower. But so, anyways, when the hawthorn flower blooms, it actually carries the scent of like sexual fluids. Like it has like a really similar.
Really? I did not know that. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
I took this really amazing workshop by this guy. Sean Donahue, I think. This was a long time ago. It was like 10 years ago. But him and Jim McDonald, I think is the other person on our list, called Jim McDonald. They co-taught a class on Hawthorne, and they taught it through, Thomas the Rhymer. And but then they talked about the chemical composition and how the plant grows and decays. And it's so interesting because it's a plant of both sex and death. So when the flowers bloom and they're in that particular state, it does, yeah, so it has this like sexual fluid similar scent to it. And then in the fall, when the berries are there, then it carries a similar scent to like the decay of flesh, of death. But if you want to look a little bit more into that, I would look up both of those, either of those guys, and with like Hawthorne, because my knowledge starts to decline when we get into the science stuff.
Gotcha. No, that's fine. I loved also, you're like just mix waters and stuff, because I love to burn things. But whenever I have my mom around, she gets really anxious with smoke and fire, and that's
Mhm.
for different reasons. But so I am a lot more careful. Like, I have to, if I'm burning any incense and she's around, I always have to like tell her, be like, hey, I'm burning some incense, or like, hey, I just blew out a candle, so that she doesn't have kind of like some anxiety about it. And what I love is that, especially after reading the Water Witchcraft, I swear to God, it's like one of my favorite books now, for the craft, is making room sprays for, like, if you can't, if you're living in a dorm, or you're living in a place that you can't light things on fire, or have smoke, or you have somebody who is anxious around smoke and fire, like a spray is so great. Or if you have pets, and you don't want them in the room, and you can't like engulf the room with incense, which, as witchy and beautiful as that is, sometimes you can't do that. And one of my favorite things to work with is juniper. I work with juniper very, very intimately, and I love the way that it smells when you burn it. But again, if I ever have my mom around, I can't do that. And I read this book and I was like, why didn't I think of putting it into a spray? Like, why did I not think of that? And so now I use it all the time. Like, it's one of my almost daily things, is where I just like spray it around, and I'm like, yes, this is good. It's cleansed and protected, and here we are. It's
I
fantastic,
love
and
it.
like craft changing for me, life changing. It was amazing. So on that, wait, I had two that kind of went together. Oh, so yes, witchcraft for the landlocked, because I am in Colorado. But you already kind of touched on that, of like findaspring.com or something like that. I'll find it and I'll put it in the link. Thoughts on using tap water?
Ooh,
Because
that's a good one.
yeah, it's I mean, I have, like some canals and like little creeks and streams and stuff, but if you're in a pinch, right? Like, thoughts on using tap water? Because I have my own thoughts and I'd like to share it, but like, I want to hear it first from you.
Oh, okay. So it depends on your tap water.
Okay.
So my tap water is technically groundwater that goes through a little processing plant in my hamlet, because I'm not even big enough for a village. I'm a hamlet. Um,
Okay.
so, um, so that's what my tap water is. But tap water in New York City is different because it's been processed. Either, well, it's been processed and reused and filtered and all sorts of stuff. But so it's going to depend. I would say use your intuition and really feel it out. But the important thing to remember is that water absorbs vibration. So even if it's tap water, and that's all you have to work with, it doesn't matter. Pour that into a singing bowl and give it a couple of good spins around and really shake up the energy of the tap water and start shifting it into something a little bit more structured. Um, so that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be drinkable, but yes, absolutely, it can still be used. I'm also of the mind that all water has a purpose. And so even stinky, moldy water can be used in like baneful magic. You know, that like experiment that went wrong that you forgot about, that you were like, oh crap, that's gross.
No,
Uh,
not me. I don't have those.
I have a couple. So even that can be used. And I'll go on a quick side tangent here, but even like moon water, right? There's a lot with moon water. People like to make moon water, and that's great. But like there was a meme where someone just threw like a thing of like plastic, a pack of plastic bottles, like into the moonlight or something, and they were like, "There, I made moon water," and I'm
Oh
like, oh.
no.
So actually, if you don't mind, I'll give a quick little thing on this. So moon water is actually a thing, and there is an egg core of this. Goes back into folk magic from two different places. These are both featured in the Witchcraft Museum, but I do think that Gemma Gary wrote about these in Wished Water as well. One of them is a moon rake, and the other is a ballast bottle scrying staff. So the ballast bottle scrying staff is literally just a glass bottle, and it's ballast bottle, which means that it doesn't have the flat bottom to it. It kind of comes down in a point. And this was actually something that was used on a ship, and they would roll back and forth. This is why they are created this way. So the scrying staff, you take this wooden stick and you'd fill this ballast bottle with water, and then you would put that ballast bottle onto the stick and hold that up to then catch the reflection or see the reflection of the moon through the glass bottle. So this is where I think the origins of moon water comes from. And it was used for scrying, but I'm also of a mind that damn, that's some powerful magic and some powerful water after you've captured the
Definitely.
moonlight into that. The other one is a little bit more complicated, and it's a horseshoe that is put onto a staff. So you basically have a shape like this. And then a bowl is or cup is put into that, and you row out in a boat into on a lake till you get to the point where you can actually see the moon reflection on the water or the light of the moon on the water. And you extend the bowl and cup, and then you
Ah,
scoop the water from that light and you bring that back in, and then you have to mix it with the person's pee and a whole bunch of other stuff, but
classic
um
folk magic.
right,
All
like
that pee.
in that.
Always messing around
um
with your pee.
so anyways, I think I went off a side tangent and
That's
didn't
fine.
answer your question, but I wanted to like give some more information
Mhm.
of simple waters.
No, it's great. I mean, the way that I used to use water previously, I mean, I still do use it heavily like this, but now I just use water a lot more. But a lot of the time I would put water in a bowl and I'd cleanse it and bless it and whatever and charge it. And I used it as a magnifier for any of my spells. So if I was trying to magnify whatever I was doing or kind of send out like on a larger scale, or just kind of like, or either that or you could, what is it? I guess amplifier would be a better word for that. And then I could also use it as a magnifier because, you know, like if you're in the water and you don't have sunscreen on or something like that, you can get burned still because it's magnifying the sun. And so I would put the water in the bowl and then I would have one of those novena candles, the 7-day candles in the middle of the bowl and be working that as I did that. So
Yeah,
that's a really like common way that I used water and still do.
you
And
could even take that water when you're done with the spell and pour it into a river or into the ocean to really get all of
oh my
that
god, I'm taking that.
energy out there. Yeah, take
God,
it.
I love it. And then you know, what is it? I have the Rose of Jericho's. The I don't know what else they're called. I grew up learning them or learned them as the dinosaur plant because they, they tumble and then they grow. I'll put a photo on for if anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about. But I use those quite often. And the woman at the Botanica that I go to, she is amazing. I love Paula. Every time I go in there, she like gives me something new. But she's like, oh yeah, I always use the water like in my prosperity sprays or what. And I was like, why did I not like, it's so simple, but it's so powerful of just these little things. And that's the folk magic. That's the folk magic mind of like, oh, well, I already have this, so might as well continue to use it as much as I possibly can. And
Yeah, I have 3 like huge ones. So
yeah,
I bought one that was like this big, and then I have been gifted like 3
those
big
huge,
ones like
yeah.
this over the years. So I actually so it was called the resurrection plant is
Yes.
sometimes what I've heard it called. So I actually was using it for, it's kind of similar, but actually for resurrection water. And anybody that follows a folk magic path that brings in Christianity or Catholicism to make this on Easter would be quite potent. For me, not so much. That's not my particular path, but still the idea of resurrection, of death and rebirth. So that rebirth water, or say that you had a project that you love, but life happened and it got put to the side, and you're ready to go back and like resurrect it. You can create this, seeing that plant unfurl, come back to life, and then use that same water to then help that project unfurl and come back to life.
I'm stealing that too.
There's like a really old blog somewhere on the internet called maybe under resurrection water, like 2013. God, when I was such an awful blogger and author back then. I actually went back to university in 2013 because I knew that I was going to need to do more work with writing, and I was not good at it. I was an artist, and so I actually went back and got a degree in anthropology to teach, and partially to teach myself and to learn how to actually do academic research, and how to actually like write and tell what a good source is from a bad source. Because before 2013, I did not know.
It's a learned skill. It is,
Yeah.
and I think
Mhm.
that could go on a whole other tangent of the
Yeah.
witchcraft community. Of a lot of people will source things that you're like, that's not probably the most reliable place you could have gotten your information, and but a lot of people don't know, and it's a learned skill, definitely.
Yeah, and I had to like work really hard at learning that skill.
Yeah,
But
and
thankfully,
the difference between things you need to source and things that are UPG, of like, you know, both are okay as long as you are sourcing the things you need to source. If you're trying to say that it's a factual history thing, or if you're saying in my experience, like there's 2 totally different things. Both are
yeah,
valid as long as you are stating that they are what they are.
exactly.
Mm.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. Full tangent always, all the tangents. I have one last question for you, and then I'm going to probably move you over to my Patreon, because I let my patrons ask questions separately for just for them. So I have one last question for you. And then we will wrap it up and I'll move you over to Patreon. The last question is there anything that you're willing to share that a water spirit has ever said or showed you that you feel like is important to you, that either you carry with you in your day-to-day life, or that you think that everybody else should know, or just like has stuck with you?
Yeah, okay. That's good. I didn't really get to talk about my experience with water spirits, but
I mean, you
going
can
back,
come back. You were more than welcome to come back on the channel and we can talk all about water spirits.
but so this go I mean, I can remember my first spirit contact. Of course, I didn't know what it was until much later, but I was about 13. The spirit of the rock spring in Florida. She's feminine. But yeah, so she was the first one that I really had, and I actually asked her to save me, and she did, and look where I'm at now. Um, but there's a lot of, okay, so here's what I'd like to say is there's a lot of chatter on the internet about good spirits, bad spirits, how to approach the fae, how not to approach the fae. The fae are gonna eat you. Oh, they're just sparkly little beings. You know, we have this wide variety. And when it comes to water spirits, in my experience, there are absolutely those kind that are terrifying. And then there's absolutely those kind that are very beautiful. But neither of them, depending on how they look, inform their actual intentions. And so the best way to interact with and to work with water spirits is to first show up and do the work. And when I say do the work, I mean tending the water. Don't you just show up at the ocean and be like, hey, what's up, mermaids? Make me rich. They might say, okay, sure, come here. And
Yeah.
then they might drown you.
Come on in the water. I'll make you rich. And you're like, okay.
Right. There's actual stories about this, and then they drown. But there are a lot of water spirits, a majority that come to me, not all. So always be careful, right? Always be careful, always be cautious, always work with wisdom and make your decisions with wisdom. But there's a whole host of water spirits that are very interested in working with humans that are different, that are conscious, that have the interest of water and the natural environment as their love, as their forefront. And if this is you and you want to make contact with a water spirit and perhaps work with a water spirit or um, uh, like work with one, have a relationship with one, honor one, show up at the water's edge, the physical water's edge, and do your meditation work there. And then clean it. Make sure that you leave the sites cleaner than how you found them. Start tending. And then after doing that for a little bit, check in and see if the water spirits are there and watching. And if so, there may be one that wants to work with you and in order to help you continue your work. So reciprocity when it comes to water magic and working with water spirits, I think is key. And then the possibilities open up from there. There's a reason that mermaids have been associated with treasure, while certain lake ladies have been associated with healing or with magic. Why there is massive amounts of lore and egregore surrounding sacred wells and healing. It's not just the water in the spring that's doing the healing. It's not just the tree spirits. It's the spirit of the well or the water nymphs that dwell within. And so while there is a lot of lore out there about, oh, be careful and be cautious, water itself is a precious commodity. It's in danger, and we actually can make a change. So when we work in symbiosis with these spirits, they can benefit us as long as our work is focused on continuing to benefit them. So you can build deep, magical, powerful relationships through reciprocity.
I love that. That was such a good answer.
but
um,
it's true though. I mean, this is what they've really showed me is like, what's next? Start telling people to care for the water. Okay, how do I do that? Well, get out there and clean it. Get out there and do protection rituals. You know, like go with a trash bag, and then when you're done, go and do protective pentagrams all down the side of the riverbank or down the ocean. And let's try and make a change
yeah.
before it's $1,000 for a bottle of water.
Yeah. I mean, water is life, you know, and so it's like the fact that we're mistreating it is incredibly disheartening. Um,
Yeah.
would you ever consider writing a book on water spirits?
Oh, I would love to.
I would love that book from you. I would eat that book up. I think I had one more question, but I didn't write it down and my brain doesn't hold things. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to, hang out with me and answer all these questions for me and just give me your wealth of knowledge. Where can people find you on the
Oh,
internet or books, all that jazz? Link
okay.
everything. Yeah.
Great. So I actually started a website that I call a portfolio website. It's not complete, but it's just Annwyn Avalon, so first and last.com. And that actually, it's got like those squares, and it will bring you to all the different things. If you want to learn about Twiskle Rose, the Avalonian tradition and witchcraft that I run, that's on there. If you want to learn about my work as a water priestess or join water priestess training, it's on there. Same thing if you want to join like water magic courses, that water witchcraft is on there. My art's on there. My dance is on there. But if you have a preference for just one or the other, you can get to water witchcraft by just going to waterwitchcraft.com, and then water priestess by going to waterpriestess.com. So those are the main places. I do a ton of stuff on Instagram. You can find me there again under Annwyn Avalon. I do a live stream almost every week, and I try and post reels and educational stuff. I don't know. I slacked off a little bit this spring, but I have plans for more posting this summer and fall.
And
So
I was on one of the Water Wednesdays, so
yes,
yeah, and
go
then I went through and like binge watched all of them.
Yeah, make sure that when you visit the page, you don't just stick to that home profile thing and use the little side buttons, because I have like a couple collections. There's all of the live streams are under the live stream tag, and so you can go all the way back a year or two, and then there's the reels. So not everything is kept on that little profile. I tend to
I know,
move
I
them
moved
off.
mine over too. So people are like, where did this go? And I'm like, it's still there. It's just not on the main page. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, just click
Cool.
those other tabs because there's so much information.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna end this one here and move you over to Patreon so that they can ask you their Patreon exclusive questions. But again, I really appreciate it, and I hope to have you on again to talk about water spirits. Whether that's before or after the book comes out, I don't know. But I look forward to that.
Awesome.
All right. Sweet.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
I really hope that you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Packed full of information, and I cannot wait to interview her again. I hope to maybe see her in person one day and pick her brain a little bit more about water magic and water spirits. But until then, I will leave all of the links down below where you can find Annwyn and all of her work. But that is it for this video, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Best of luck. Be kind to each other, and may your gods treat you as you've treated others. Bye.